Right. Well, I think I'm a muffin, ma frapo.
That had to go
awesome.
in there.
Awesome.
Wellangatikame, ma frapo, and welcome again to the Eana Mokri podcast. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. My name is Munich, and here with me I have the full cast, four of my co-hosts. We have Eana.
Kalt-i.
Plumps.
Kalt-i.
Awe.
Kalt-i.
And Willem.
Kalt-i.
All right, so first up, just very quickly, I want to mention that the latest issue of Tsu'tey's Path is now on comic book shelves everywhere, digital or physical. We won't be discussing the new issue this cast. As always, we usually give a couple of weeks for everyone to read the actual issue, but we will be talking about it next cast, so if you don't want spoilers, as always, pick it up. You can get it digitally at darkhorse.com or from your local comic provider. The meat and potatoes of this episode are going to be talking about the latest Avatarmeet in Europe that happened several weeks ago now. Our cast recording schedule got a little messed up because people weren't available or busy because of or adjacent to that meeting, but we got everyone here now, and with a full crew here, we can commence discussion. One of the best parts about this meetup is that we got a bunch of interviews with attendees as well as actors in the Cirque Du Soleil show, TORUK. And for the following segments, we are going to play some clips from the interviews.
What is your name?
Yeah, hi, ich bin Jerome. My name is Marek. My nickname is Ikxeru. This is my second Avatar meetup.
I'm Niklas Ryan, or Nikolim. This was my first time I was in a meeting.
Kalt-i, ma frapo. Well, of course, jou Andy. Of course, jou eywa'eveng teatan.
What did you think about the TORUK show?
TORUK, the light, the visuals, the sound, it's just mind-blowing. It's really unbelievable. Like, I couldn't even imagine how it would be to see all the lights.
Also, es war ja das erste Mal,
It was the first time that I've seen it, and it was completely fascinating. I didn't know where to look. It was such a spectacle. You have to watch the show at least 5 times. Unfortunately, I won't have that chance anymore.
The first time I saw TORUK was in Cologne last year. But it's anytime you see it, it's every time it's new. There are some new elements in the show, some new songs, and so on.
What are your thoughts on the backstage tour?
The TORUK show was awesome, like always. And the backstage tour was like 2 levels more.
Okay.
2 levels better. Also,
I just felt as if I was on Pandora. So partly just wow.
Wow.
Okay.
The backstage tour was quite amazing. We were on the stage, which if you told me this 1 year ago, I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And as you can confirm, I have a really big smile all the time. We took so many pictures. Unbelievable. Just amazing.
And you're one of the people who saw it even the second time the next night, right?
Yes, it was really interesting, because we saw all of the stage and we know how this works, and the artists, the acrobats, they do such a great job. I couldn't do this. They run around the whole time. I would be done, completely done. Really amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been incredibly lucky in the way that they have been invited by Lightstorm and or Cirque du Soleil to go backstage and have a full tour for, I think it was 3.5 hours even.
Oh, wow, that's long.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And see the whole stage, and they even turned on all the lights for them and the special effects and stuff, I heard. And it must have been amazing. Not only the show per se, but the whole backstage tour.
It's really awesome that they are willing to bring in fans in that way. Like, I mean, we're kind of the super fans of what they're doing. I'm sure a lot of their audience are probably more casual Avatar fans, or maybe, you know, maybe haven't even seen Avatar and are just going to a Cirque du Soleil show. So it's probably really exciting for them to see people who are like genuinely excited in this way. But it's still really awesome of them to do something, especially so long. Like I figured that if it's going to be like a backstage thing, it might have been like 15 or 30 minutes, just like a really kind of quick, like, oh, we don't have much time, we're busy. But that's really awesome of them.
Yes, I like, so in Cologne last year, it was kind of short, the backstage tour, but it was also because that was on a day where they were moving to another city. But here in Munich, they were also playing the next day still. So they had all the time. So I can briefly say what we did behind the scenes. So first we just went to the stage and saw the stage just without any lighting, just like as the actors would see it when they're practicing, I guess. And then Jeremiah, who plays Ralu in the show, gave us some kind of leNa'vi movement lesson. So we all had to move and run, hunt and dance like leNa'vi, which was really interesting and really cool to see. So apparently that's one of the exercises they do with new acrobats who join the show.
That makes sense though, because I remember seeing the behind the scenes from Avatar the film. The actors went through movement training to make them walk and move less like people and more like have these slightly like animalistic aspects to their movement. And it's really cool that they did that for the show as well. I haven't seen it, but
exactly. And as far as I understood it, the one movement or choreography trainer who worked on Avatar was also responsible for showing the movement to the actors.
Oh, really?
That's awesome. I mean, it makes sense to pick the person who is most practiced with it, but yeah, that's still awesome.
Doesn't always happen that way.
The only downside, I mean, it was amazing, but the only downside was that I had sore muscles after that.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, you have to be pretty physically fit to do what Cirque du Soleil does.
Yes.
Incredibly fit, yes. It's unbelievable. Like if you already see just Ralu, for example, if you just see him move around the stage, not even during the performance, but just like during this workshop, it's just unbelievable. Like even a single movement I cannot do properly, and they do this all night. Like how even? I don't know.
Well, acting and moving like that is their job, right? They've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Probably most of their lives, because you have to have some physique appropriate to being able to do movements like that. So I would have died. I'm sure.
Well, like anything, it's just the amount of time that you spend doing something. I mean, I don't go and do Cirque du Soleil level performances regularly, but I'm sure that if I did, and like over months and years, I would certainly get much better at it.
Sure, yeah.
Well, the thing that I thought was very good was that he had such an energy about him that he just almost everyone was doing it with him, except for people who couldn't move for physical reasons. But that's what I thought was very very interesting.
He even got me to do it. So
we're gonna hear more actually from Ralu, or Ralu's actor anyway, in in a little bit, but for now we're going to move on to a little segment from the radio play that was recently released. Or I guess re-released is more accurate here, because now this is with the additions from Karyu Pawl. Like, this was organized well before, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it was already.
It was premiered on the Avatarmeet, as far as I know, and even Karyu Pawl and Purton and other people worked on it. And yeah, the premiere was on the Avatarmeet, and now it's been released on our community as well.
Awesome. And with that, here's a couple of clips.
Leortaki aise koyu sit sahik alusinat an skumsengi. Aya tuteri kerkatura aao sngem tisrau sinit an. Ultevaiset ketsulunfko srungsivi nifla tsai fora Ftxozä tisrauti. Mamesur na ao. Stonga fesesp in kahi I aulo no wot volire. Ulteset fe olu.
Malenei. Zag ik nou pievelt en wenghoek, wien seppi?
Pijn niet, pijn.
Kege, zen kepive moe, net zag ik, liko.
Malenei, kame ingati.
Wat zei ik? Kame ingati. Kemberlin.
Kiun oe rut mamenga. Stetsi won zeki wo zena ongari won Syulang idatum. Sat pole onwe, makto zong, eywa'eveng hu.
And if some of those voices sound familiar, it's because we've got some of the voice actors here with us today.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, that was basically all I said. Willem had a way bigger role than me, and he did probably a better job than me.
Not at all. Oh yeah, so so this was really a pretty long-running project. So this started, I think, over a year ago.
Yeah.
So we did the first live performance at the last Avatarmeet, and as Eana already said, we had the official premiere at this Avatarmeet.
You mean Cologne, right? It was
in Cologne, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we did a live performance in Cologne, which was really fun. So then it was a bit improvising, and there were even some random German people who came to see TORUK and saw blue people outside, so they were wondering what it was, and it was our radio play. So we had random people in the audience.
Very cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think everyone liked it.
It's really impressive. I think it's one of the more accessible, I guess, pieces of just long form leNa'vi conversation. Like it feels more authentic. That I not to knock on our own conversational practice, but I mean, we certainly pause and figure out what we're saying along the way. But this is just very consistently it feels like, spoken leNa'vi. It's also really cool that KP joined in on this. When did you get the audio for that, or how long ago before I guess the blog post did you have that stuff?
I think a month before the blog post, including the word list for some words. Yes.
Oh, okay. So you guys had spoilers.
So this was really funny because we had it all the text was in leNa'vi except for the speaker who was in German all the time, and then suddenly the main organizer, one of the people who did the most, suddenly said, "Yeah, I asked Karyu Pawl," and he said, "Yes, I'm going to do that. Just send me the text. I will translate and record." So then everyone was like, "What? Really?" That is extremely awesome.
Oh, so it came as a surprise to you guys. This wasn't something that you guys had organized beforehand.
Well,
Not really, no. Yeah.
So one of us, Andy, who you also heard in the interview, I think he organized this. Also with Purton, who did the English version, which is also really cool. Mm-hmm. And then even at Avatarmeet, we even got a DVD with the radio play on it in all 3 audio tracks, so you can switch on the fly with subtitles in all languages.
Oh, that's cool. That's a collector's item right there.
Yeah.
It is, yes. So also for our listeners, if you want to hear this radio play, you can. It's on YouTube. Also there's the 3 audio versions in German, English, and leNa'vi. And you can use subtitles in, many languages.
Yeah, I guess we will link it in this episode's description thingy, whatever.
Yep, make it so.
Yeah.
I have no part in that part of the process, so.
Sasha.
I think it's a really nice tradition that we have now going on, because thinking back, we started this, I think, on one of the first major meetups in Germany. We started this idea of doing a radio play, and one of the highlights, I think in the first two, I think I even had a small role, and one of the big highlights was when the major big meetup in Berlin that we had, where Karyu Pawl and John were present, that we could do it in front of them. So it was also a live event. And I think it's a nice tradition that we still do this, that people come up with stories and ideas for these kinds of radio plays. And from the quality-wise, it's a major jump from what I hear now and what I've heard on YouTube. The quality, I think, is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's of course thanks to everyone who participated and added their voices to the characters that were there. But mostly it was the work of eywa'eveng. So he did all the editing and mixing of music and whatnot, and he did an amazing job, I think.
Yeah,
indeed, yes.
That's his thing, yeah.
Solana. I think it's also just very cool that this is sort of another example of a community project or just a community thing that more official actors, I guess, in the world of Avatar have contributed to. Like, I mean, between there's this behind the scenes thing at the TORUK show, to Karyu Pawl very frequently working with the community, to I believe several years ago there was a tour of Lightstorm Entertainment many years ago for one of the Avatarmeets or a select group of people. And yeah, I think it's actually like just really incredible, because you think of Avatar as a franchise almost as this like top secret, especially now with the sequels underway, like this very like I don't know, corporate kind of thing, which is ironic given the nature of Avatar. But it's just how accessible the people who work on it make themselves to the community. Like it is truly impressive.
You can see that they actually love what they are doing and they love talking about it. Also, especially with Cirque du Soleil. I mean, everyone was very nice behind the scenes, and everyone just clearly loved talking about it. And they loved telling us about what they were doing. And they also liked that we were, of course, so interested in it.
Right. It's a world that really lends itself to being really loved by the people who like work with it and enjoy it.
Yes, but I can maybe imagine that if you're working with it every day, then maybe at some point it starts becoming normal-ish. But then, I mean, if you see people like who are so into this, then I mean, they clearly will like it. And we like it too, so everyone is happy.
Yeah.
I can kind of relate to that. Working on making video games can be a very long and drawn out and difficult process, and you sometimes get lost in what you are making and the sort of the day-to-day. But then like periodically I'll see like a Twitter comment or something that mentions that like, oh, they really liked this one game and they want other people to play it, and it's like, I made that. I made somebody happy. That's cool. Anyway, with that, we're going to move on to another interview segment with Ikxeru. All right, next up we have an interview segment with Ikxeru, who organized a whole lot.
So this is the interview with our Olo Iktan Sven.
Kalte,
my Olo Iktan. So you organized this meeting. Thank you very much. So can you tell us a little bit about what comes into that? What do you need to do to organize a meeting like this?
Oh, a lot. Basically, it's pretty easy to organize a meetup if you have taken part in several before. Well, first, the first thing is, of course, accommodation, which is the hotel, which was not so easy this time, because it's all about group discounts and group bookings. Actually, everybody can imagine that it's pretty hard to find a hotel where you can get like 10 rooms or more. We are lucky, or not so lucky, that our meetups always take place when there are big industry fairs in the cities. So all the hotels are fully booked. So we were very lucky to get one outside the city limits of Munich. But it turned out to be totally perfect because the subway was right in front of the hotel, and it is nice and clean, and to all the venues like the TORUK show or the botanical gardens, it was just a half an hour subway ride.
Yeah.
Next point, all the basic stuff like shirts and dinners. Of course, you can't go into a restaurant with like 20 people and say, hey, here we are, let's have a table for 20, and so on and so on.
You also made sure that we had tickets for TORUK, right?
That's...
So how did you get into contact with those people?
Oh, this is a relationship that has grown over the last years together with Lightstorm, which are so generous to support us in any way. Yeah, they always are so polite and ask us, what can we do for you? And Lightstorm and Cirque Du Soleil just did magic for us. And so many, we are so grateful to have them on our side, and they really, 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 really support the fans. I know no other fandom where fans are supported that much as with Lightstorm and Cirque Du Soleil in this case. Yeah.
So to conclude the interview, is there still anything you would want to say to our viewers, either in English or in Na'vi?
Irayo nitan.
Tam, irayo?
Yeah. And what I want to say is, see you at the next meetups.
Yes, hopefully. So everyone come to next Avatarmeet.
Yes, it's fun. It's real fun. You can always meet new people and old people. And what I totally love about the meetups is that you can talk face to face to people that you probably never would see in real life. And that's the best to make new friends.
He sounds like a delight.
He is. He's such a nice guy.
Yeah, I want to hang out with this man.
Also, as a side remark, he had one of the nicest costumes. Almost the entire meetup, he walks around in blue and with a giant feather thingy on his head.
Oh, that's true.
Incredible.
Which looked really awesome and is really funny, like if you cannot fit in elevators and stuff.
That's true. Yeah,
well, we talked about accommodations, but if the elevator can't accommodate the leader.
And he's also one of the few people who also travel to the American meetups. So if either of you is going, I mean, we talked about this, Pamarik, I think you will meet him.
Awesome.
Yeah, what I find, or what we have to stress more and more is just the generosity that we get from Lightstorm and from the TORUK show. And I think, we have to take the opportunity to thank Janie Mallet, who is the publicity or publicist and press and media relations for Cirque du Soleil, who welcomed us and showed us around together with Jeremiah. She was so nice and friendly and full of energy, and that was a real delight. And thanks to her, we also got the interview that's coming up. So we have to say a big irayo.
Irayo nit an.
Irayo nit an, man.
Irayo nit an.
Even from me, even if I wasn't at the meetup, I feel fucking grateful for everything they did for the guys who went. It's just mind blowing how much Lightstorm has done in the past and still does for this community and all the fans, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I found that most striking that's what he mentioned, because he's right that you just don't hear about stuff like that in many other communities, which is awesome.
So during the behind the scenes, we also had a 45-minute session with Jeremiah, Ralu's actor, where he performed his makeup, his facial makeup, right in front of us, basically. So you could see how he painted himself blue. And afterwards, we watched the documentary, and then there was little time for us to interview him.
We are here with the Eana Mokri podcast, and we have a special guest. Please tell us your name.
My name is Jeremiah Hughes, and I play Ralu in the show TORUK, The First Flight.
Wonderful, thank you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an artist in Cirque Du Soleil. I started dance when I was young, and dance became a little bit of gymnastics, and it really became a vehicle for me to want to get into more acting. And then having many different little skills welcomed me into the world of Cirque Du Soleil. So then they said, oh, we need somebody who can do gymnastics and dance and act and so many things, and there's a special place for me.
He has such a lovely voice. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first of all, pronunciation was on point.
Yeah, I was not expecting the proper leNa'vi artist in there.
You see what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that's dedication.
In comparison to other Cirque du Soleil shows, what's the most challenging aspect of the show?
Well, this show, I've worked in many shows, and this show has a very unique structure where my character enters stage at the very beginning of the show, it stays on for the 2 hours, and then does the final bow. So in other shows, I've had opportunities where I come on stage and it's like a 1 minute, 3 minute burst of energy. It's fire, it's explosion, it's fun. Yeah. And then you go and you take a breath, you drink water, you think about what's next, and you come back. This one is completely immersive. I begin the show, I have this microphone on, I'm speaking leNa'vi, I have the special lighting effect. So really, it's just about believing and seeing Pandora everywhere I go. Yeah. And then just the physical demand of being on the world for 2 hours, where you're like, everything is a wolf attacking, or a person attacking you with a stick, or running for your life, or playing in the water and the flowers. And so it's a lot to maintain energetically, and a lot to handle emotionally, but then it also has the greatest fruits and rewards for such hard work.
Okay.
Dang, yeah. I didn't think about that, but yeah, if you're the main character of the show, you do have to be on for the entire time. Like I have never seen a Cirque du Soleil show myself, but from what I've seen, it's always just these really intense acrobatic moments. But I can also see that would be something like you mentioned, where it's just like you're on for a couple of minutes, you give it your all, and then you have a breather. But yeah, it just doesn't have that opportunity. And but he also sounds like, again, you can just tell, just even with just he said leNa'vi properly.
I know.
Thank
you.
Especially with the intense moments, and now he has to, they have to drag it out for these 2 hours. They said within or during the tour that at some point they tracked the movements of the actors, and per show they walk around like 10K.
Holy moly!
What is that? Kilometers? Yeah, 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
In one show. So that's
wow.
Whew. And they do that like. They do one show a night, so it's
sometimes 2 a day, I think. Yeah, but
God. Yeah, I think then Ralu gets like the spare actor.
Yeah, exactly.
But then still, this is 10 kilometers while they are doing acts all the time, like they're climbing and kicking and as he said, hit people with sticks. I don't know. You saw everything during this show.
It's not a 10-kilometer walk, basically.
Yeah. No, not at all.
It's 10 kilometers through an obstacle course.
Yes.
Yeah.
While acting.
Yes.
While acting, speaking in leNa'vi, and so on.
And anything special about the costume? You are now in full costume.
Yes. We're all Na'vi right now, so it's very cool.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Anything special about the costume that you need to pay attention to?
Yeah, and wardrobe would actually back me up. The two things that wardrobe dislikes the most about me is that I destroy the shoes and the knees.
Okay.
Because I'm always sliding and spinning and turning and rolling.
Yeah.
So the knees, they've had to put in special layers of multiple layers of costume and glue to like make a silicone pad.
Okay.
And the shoes, because we use these special vibrams that are, so we have nice toes and we can actually articulate, and they have feet.
Yeah.
But the problem is they don't spin well. They're very good at traction. They can climb the rope bridge. We go right up. But when I spin, I always, almost every time I forget and I do something dynamic, I go, oh, I just destroyed a pair of shoes in one move. Right. So in ways, it's very liberating to be so free. And then also you have to remind yourself, you're like, I'm 99.9% free. Like I could do anything. Just be careful of these few moves.
Okay. Everything about the tail? Did you get stuck at some point?
Oh, true, the tail. Yeah, so there's this entire, like, you know when you give, like, the doctor gets their white coat? In this show, really, it's the blue tail. This is like, that's like and now you're in Na'vi. And if you wear it to stage, if somebody was to wear the costume to stage, you'd be like, oh, you have to wear it. But if they wear the blue tail, you're like, oh, you're doing practice your character. Okay. And a lot of it is the acrobatic. So we'll have the tail, and as you like dive backwards, you might put your hand down on your own tail, and mid backflip, you're like, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I not break the tail? So it's just a lot of play of like learning what choices you have. And the tail also, again, the shoes don't like it, but spinning is so much fun because you just spin and you have just whips happen. Yeah, so it's great.
Jake, watch your tail. No, but seriously, I mean, he brings up some great points, and I was just chuckling when I was listening about him tearing up those shoes because, like, holy crap.
Like, yeah, it's an interesting thought too, because like he's right. You don't really think about stuff like that, especially the whole tail during the backflip thing. That's not something that you would immediately come to mind until you're in the situation, and then you're like, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah. That's why I was thinking about it, because I was watching the show the previous evening, and then you see how they all jump through hoops, and I thought you have to have another body experience or a body feeling to know, okay, there is part of me that I drag behind me, and I have to pay attention to what I jump through or by or so.
Right, and as he mentioned, you don't like really become Na'vi until you have to consider that tail, and then it's like, no amount of like, I guess you can't. That's not something you can really prepare for. And that's definitely something you have to learn, like very specific to that role.
Yep.
I liked also the bit about kind of the initiation into the group. It's like a signification of that. That was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
One more question is, now that the show is stopping in a month or so, how do you feel? Like, do you feel like Na'vi needing to go back to the human world, or?
A little bit. There's been some thoughts of how when I was first announced to me that the show was closing, I was at a peace already because I knew that I had been so happy and had such gifts given to me through the show. So I was already at peace. And so for the last months, I've only been able just to enjoy every show. My arc of the 5 stages of like death, or like where you're like bargaining, denial, acceptance. I was at acceptance, and I was like, man, every day is wonderful, and just taking a lot of the joy for it. So I think I will keep what I have learned and move forward with grace.
So eloquently spoken.
Yeah. With grace, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And speaking, I mean, we talked about this in the last episode that the show is closing. Today is the last, as of recording, it's the last show. Yep. And one of the interviews that we had at the beginning, Nick is actually in London now and is watching the last show in London.
Oh, right.
Yeah. During the meetup, so after we saw the show, like literally after the show, there were people on their phones checking ticket prices in London because they were so impressed they wanted to see it in another time.
Right. I'm still kicking myself over not seeing it because I it's one of those things you believe is just gonna go on forever, but you know.
Yeah, you think so. Yeah.
I hope the video of it becomes more easily and more widely accessible.
I laugh because as you said, as he was talking about it, I was like, eBay, how much is?
Yeah, TORUK DVD.
About $300. So
yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
really, I bought it. It was not that expensive.
You now own a very valuable object.
Well, wow. I've not seen it in person, but I've been able to see it on TV here in Germany. We have a TV station called Arte, which is a German-French television thingy, and they showed TORUK there pretty early on when it started. So I was able to watch it this way. Of course, it's I imagine not anything like watching it in real, for real.
Of course.
So it's a bummer that I wasn't able to go and see it for myself, but at least it's something.
Yeah. And as the interview said that they still change. That was the amazing part. I mean, a few of us now saw it 3 or 4 times, and they say every show is different because they change. Even in the last month, they change certain routines, certain songs, and you say, who would go through this trouble? You know the show is closing, and they still change things. So that's amazing.
Comes from a place of love, clearly.
Yeah,
I mean, God, just hear him speak. Like it's coming from a place of passion. Like everyone really loves this.
Yeah, it's striking how much they love it. Like it's amazing, to be honest. I've seen a couple of Cirque Du Soleil shows before, but I didn't get to see TORUK either. I was out of the fandom at the time when it was in the US, but
same.
Like it's always been impressive. I was lucky enough to get to see the Michael Jackson one, and that one was really, really, really amazing.
Yeah, they collab with a lot of disparate things. I know there's a French electronic artist I absolutely love. It goes by M83, and they collabed with them on just this one show, and I'm like, dang, they keep doing cool stuff, and I really need to just go see some of their shows.
I did not know that, because I am a fan of M83 as well. So.
Oh, we can be friends now.
As opposed to before.
Yeah, as opposed to before, where we were co-hosts.
No.
It's like the Mythbusters. They don't really like each other, but like.
Right. I'm pretty sure you're the. Are you the Adam Savage here, or
most likely?
Okay.
Cool. I do often make stuff explode from time to time, so like
perfect.
So maybe before we go completely off topic, let's
final interview segment. Yeah. Let's do this.
Speaking of learning, how's your Na'vi?
Na'vi is sun. It's functional at best. So what I do is I picked key phrases that I know that I would like to go to many times, and like wartolivu, like I mess up a lot. So so a lot of times I'm finding N2 somewhere and I want to just like wartolivu, and then I learned how to say the script that I have to say. No, that's not that. No, lolo mo wea sahikori tsunzi vungvi trau trautini autoruk. Then I learned deviations to say with different chiefs. So that one is like beautiful because it has like melodic tone. Tsunzi vungvi trau trautini autoruk. It's fun. But then like if I'm getting my butt kicked by the tipani olo aktan, then I may lolo mo wea sahikori fkokapsi vi trau trau fo umo autoruk. So like just other choices like in the grammar to be like nice like punch, because it says it's kind of like being able to have something visceral, like
Okay.
But you will keep it up
I'll keep
after
it up.
the show.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You're always welcome.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having the time for us.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was a pleasure to share.
Yeah. Irayo.
Irayo ewanaru.
Irayo maralu.
Yes, please, if you listen to this, please come join. It would be awesome.
I'd be honored to teach you more.
We all would. Or just converse with you. Anyway, I love how he pointed out the melodic nature of the language. That he discovered it for himself, I think, and tried to use it to his advantage in order to transport intent and like tone when speaking to certain other individuals.
Yeah, especially I also like how he mentioned that he does adapt it to the different circumstances, and that's one of the key features I feel of the Na'vi language. That's like if you were to advertise it, it's like it's really flexible. Like there's a lot of different ways you can express yourself just with the grammar tools.
Yeah, like he was using similar words and still getting different effects. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love how they put attention into this, like into the language where, I mean, literally 0 people, or when Avatarmeet is there, like literally 10 people can understand.
I wonder if it's almost more stressful when Avatarmeet comes. Like,
it's like, okay,
oh, crap.
do the show, but this time the audience actually knows what you're saying and is judging you.
It is actually cool though, because I mean, when I was in the audience, I couldn't really follow everything, but I think I could follow about 50%. Mostly the simpler phrases, of course, but that still like gives a lot more depth. Like you know things earlier than they are told to you by the speaker. Like they of course tell the story in English, or in this case German.
Yeah.
But sometimes things will be clear because you can understand the Na'vi. That is really cool.
Yeah. So the storyteller is the only one who speaks German, English, French, whatever, and every actor is then everything else on the stage is in Na'vi entirely.
Really? That I didn't know. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
It is also the songs are all in Na'vi. They're also mostly on the soundtrack, which you can find on Spotify.
Wonderful soundtrack.
Yes, I like it a lot.
We'll just favorite that real quick. Okay.
So after the show, I think I've been humming leNa'vi for days in my head.
Right. I always imagine that if there was a sufficiently large Avatarmeet, we could probably get a leNa'vi like chorus going.
Wow. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
At some point I tried, but it didn't really work.
Everybody who's listening to this better come.
Yeah.
If you're planning on going to an Avatarmeet, learn the lyrics to leNa'vi. I swear it's very short. You can do it. And when some tall, annoying guy starts belting out the lyrics, you can follow along, and that'll be me.
Preferably at the top of some tower or staircase or something of those.
Yeah, some high object. Yeah, yes. I'll climb on something.
King Kong style.
And like King Kong, the authorities will then try to take me down.
Likely.
Speaking of authorities, we have some new words from the authority on the language, Karyu Pawl. Back at the beginning of June, we got a new blog post on na'viteri.org featuring some new additions to the language. Many of them were related to the radio play that we talked about earlier, and were actually specifically brought into the language for the radio play.
Yeah,
but we got a bunch of other great words too.
So this blog post came rolling in during Avatarmeet. So Plums and I then spent until, 2:30 in the night analyzing new words. Awesome.
Fun.
Yep. And Willem and I was in, there's a new blog post. We have to read it now.
You need to update the dictionary website.
Right. Yeah, he always drops these in like the middle of the night. I always like, it'll always be like I'll wake up like randomly in the night or whatever, and I'll just check my phone to see what time it is, and it'll be like I have a bunch of Discord notifications of like there's a new words. Oh my god!
Your
it's like
app is just exploding.
Exactly, and it's like, do I want to wake up for this? Do I want to like read through this at like 4 a.m? And the answer is always yes, but
yeah, of course,
of course.
Is that a question?
It's word Christmas, of course. Like you got it. Christmas.
So what do we think of the new words? Mapamarik, your turn.
Yeah, I have some opinions. So
you know how it goes. Start with the good ones and then go into the critique.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make the compliment sandwich. So there's some good words in this group, and there are some words that I am not as excited about. So
we have to emphasize that this is personal preference, right?
Yeah. Warning, the following is literally just this guy's opinion. So some of the words that stood out that is like especially interesting to me was loho for something to just be surprising. I really like stative verbs because they really trip up the like English brain, and anything to sort of differentiate lì'fya from English is always great. I also really like Ftxozä, just knowing that is basically the lì'fya equivalent of so it's like Ftxozä. Like those little accents really make the language come alive. One of the things I remember from Japanese when I studied it was just like eto for like as like a thinking kind of utterance. And once I started working that into my conversation, like while I was trying to converse in Japanese or like think about what I was saying, it like I felt like, oh, this feels good. This like now I feel like I'm actually like really embracing a different language.
Yeah, Ftxozä was one of my favorites too. I like it when we get new interjections.
Yeah, absolutely, because humming and and whatever is just natural in any language on Earth at least. So lì'fya having some kind of equivalent is logical, I think, and nice to have.
Mm-hmm. All right. Other big wins for me were I love etymology. I am chief etymology correspondent, and words like kelep imrun, which is literally like not adjective form of often found, like often find, like that's just these kind of like very literal words I am a huge fan of, especially when they just combine interesting pieces together, which brings me to words that I'm less excited about. So there's a lot of words in this post that had derivatives from t'an. We had like t'ansnum, t'ava,
asunu.
Okay, asunu I actually really like, ironically.
Nah.
That's what the word means. But like, I like that Karyu Pawl outlined a very specific usage of it, where it's just like, there's sunu, and there's like asunu, and then there's yaune. And like he contrasted those, and I thought that was a very adequate contrast. But these words that are ta compounds, I feel like they're really predictable, like to the point where I often feel that Karyu Pawl should just lend us ta as a productive prefix onto adjectives and just let us go nuts with it, because whenever these new words are added with their like ta derivatives, it's just like, oh, I mean, I could see that coming. I was like, I obviously know what that is. And part of that is just, the etymology of lì'fya is very graceful and it allows for such things and you can easily understand it. But it also, to me, feels less creative, and it always feels like a shitty thing to harp on, like a lack of creativity. But I don't know.
it gets interesting because it's not only adjectives that that get the da before, because we have an sum and so on. But it would be interesting to have it before adjectives. But then the thing that bugs me a little bit about asunu is what's now the difference between asunu and sununitan? Because for me, we had at least the concept of it in the form of sununitan.
So for me, it's not a meaning gap. We already had the word for this, sununitan. I would also say sununitan often.
I think I might be able to answer that. I think asunu is a greater degree than sununitan, because sununitan is like a lot, but this is more like the way that we would use love.
I agree with Aoi in a little bit. The way I think about it is because the da is baked into the verb as opposed to an addition that then describes it. It feels like that da is more part of the action itself. So it does feel like the action itself is a lot of this, not just this action a lot.
But then you're basically saying it should not be productive, because if you would make it productive, then the meaning would need to be predictable.
Well, I guess I would have been shown who is the boss.
No, I'm just giving suggestions.
All right, my final thing I'm going to say while I have the mic here. I dislike rau, the adposition for down to. I do not like this word. I think there was a significantly better word that it could have been. It should have been vam, not rau.
Why?
So it is the opposite of vai. Vai is adposition up to something. And there are so many I and am pairs in na'vi for forwards versus backwards. I is like, there's the infix for the future. There's hi versus ham. There's all of these. Kai, kam. Exactly. There's so many, all these I am pairs. And it's like, why would you drop that for the opposite of something, another opposite?
Like, is it a true opposite though?
Yes.
Because can you say I'm walking up to like a hill? Can you then use vai? No, right?
You can say I'm walking up to a hill. Yeah, you can say that.
Like not for the upwards movement, right? Or maybe I'm just wrong.
No, that would be something different. Then you would use nefä.
Fair. Yeah, exactly. So I was wondering.
It's just another kind of movement. It's you're on plain land and you're going until the beginning of the mountain or the hill or whatever.
Yeah, so that was what I was thinking. So in English, this is said as up to, but in other languages like Dutch, you don't even say up to for this until meaning. So for me, like personally, when I was reading this, I was not thinking, oh, this should have been vam. I was thinking, okay, so what is actually up to? Why don't we have a word for up to now?
You mean down to?
Down to.
Well, we now have the word for down to, but then what's the word for up to? Because it's now missing.
Right, but okay, I would agree with you that this could just be an Englishism, but he also provided an example of counting down to a number, and counting up to uses vai, as far as I remember.
So I don't know if you can count down and use vai with that. So that if that's not true, then my theory completely breaks down. So maybe
I actually believe that the whole impetus for this word being proposed after I dug through was like there was a discussion that Plumps had with KP talking about counting up to numbers.
Yeah.
And then there was left a hole. Is like there was basically Karyu Pawl left an open-ended discussion. It's like, oh, I guess there isn't really a thing for counting down to. What do you think this would be? And then a couple days later, there was the proposition on submitted to LEP for this word as is, rau. And then it was sort of just taken as is, but I was reading through the discussion of there, it was brought up that vam would make more sense. And I agreed with this thing.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And I can tell you a little bit about behind the scenes of the LEP. We didn't decide. We did say that there was a discussion and that a variation could be vam. So he knew it was out there.
Okay.
And he decided for rau. So.
Okay.
Which I like, because the whole thing of creating na'vi was also to implement a feeling of the language feeling natural. And we all know that natural languages occurring on Earth aren't perfect, and they have their irregular, you know what I mean.
Yep.
They're irregular.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. And so na'vi breaking this pattern with vam and vai, implementing rau is something I like, because it breaks something that would be otherwise predictable.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, totally just my opinion.
Well, in a way, you still have vam. It's not the meaning that you want to have it, but it is there.
It exists.
In Drmrvam last Thursday. So it's still there.
Anyway, I know that there was some... there's two others that I wanted to bring up, but I don't want to talk forever. I mentioned, so guru was a word that we have talked about on the cast before.
Yeah.
And this is now brought into canonization via blog post, where it was described as...
This was great.
Yeah. It was described in fairly vague terms and sort of left saying, oh, if and when we figure out the difference between the two, I'll be sure to update you.
I find this absolutely great, because I mean we have had such a long discussion about what the difference between tween and kuru is, and no, there's no difference, at least not now. Cool.
Yeah.
Done.
So
that's of course also an outcome.
On my tier list of new words, kuru simultaneously occupies S tier and low B tier. Because if there is a difference and it's the difference that I believe it should be, then it's obviously S tier because I'm right. But if it's not, then it's low B tier because I'm wrong and I don't like it. Because I don't like synonyms.
You know,
so,
I don't want to argue, right? But I have a real problem with people who say that, oh, there must be a difference. Why?
Exactly.
Why does it have to be a difference? It's totally normal for languages to have synonyms. It is. I don't get this. Why people
it's totally normal
want
for Earth languages to have synonyms.
Yeah.
Oh no, we're getting into this discussion again.
Yeah.
Well, okay. But part of the reason I'm so opposed to synonyms is, first of all, because we don't have it a lot, which is a really weak argument. So here's point 2.
Okay.
As soon as we have synonyms being added to the language, we're going to see a huge influx in LEP proposals that are like, oh, it's this word. It's a synonym for this other word because I wanted this word to mean this thing, but I don't like the word for this thing. So here's a proposal for a word that I like. Like, it's a slippery slope for a language that is based in these kind of proposals.
Yeah. But don't you think that, especially with the new films coming up, don't you think there will be instances where, I don't know, the actors mess up, or even, a higher authority than that, if James Cameron says, oh, I don't like this word that has been in the language for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and Karyu Pawl has to come up with a new one, then there will be synonyms.
Yes,
anyone?
I'm more okay with those because those come from those come directly from people with like some amount of authority, or they have their hand in the creation of the thing that we are enjoying. But
it's long.
I don't know. I don't like the idea of some rando coming into our community saying they hate the word sngatty and then being like, well, we need a different word for, because I don't like saying sngatty, but it's a common word, so I'm going to propose zom. Okay, zom is now a word that means the exact same as sngatty. And it's like, great.
That's not going to happen, or unlikely to
really?
happen, because first we have the LEP committee who says
Okay, but why? Okay, devil's advocate though, you're arguing that synonyms are a great thing. Why would you a synonym now?
But what I try to do, especially in the anonymous post on the LEP, is to say, okay, there's valid. I like the word now. It's okay to propose it, but keep in mind that it's probably not the highest priority to repropose something. And even if we did do it, the gatekeeper of the language is still Karyu Pawl. And if he doesn't like the idea, or if he thinks that it's not necessary to have it right now, then it will be dropped.
And I think we still lack so many words for things or concepts we still don't have in the language.
Yeah.
So the vocabulary needs so many gaps filled still.
I agree,
so
and that's why I think it's a slippery slope to entertain synonyms.
I totally
but
understand
I guess it will
that.
happen.
Yeah, and
sooner or later it will happen.
Yeah,
I think.
but I know, and that's exactly what I think. I agree with you, Mapamarik, is that the slippery slope is that we will have more synonyms, but and as Eana said, we will have, or we do have, such a lack of other terms that we don't have, right? Yeah.
So
I will bring up this point too, kind of on Pamarik's side. There, even with most synonyms in natural languages, there's typically some at least subtle difference in there that makes you choose one over the other.
True.
Like the words however and although usually mean about the same thing, but one implies something different from the other.
Right.
And that kind of synonym I really like, because I like to make really descriptive writing, and that's kind of hard without having a few different synonyms to use. But
I feel like then there's a difference between a weak synonym where it's like these have there's a lot of similarities, but they do imply different things, versus, as far as we know right now, guru is a direct synonym. There is no discernible difference. We have no reason to use one over the other. Those are the kind of words that I don't. Those are the kind of synonyms I don't like.
Yeah. Okay. Understood.
Although I will point out that in the comments of that, there was a lengthy discussion between a few different people of what could be differences.
Yeah, and there's still time. Give it what do we have? 2019. Give it 2 years, and then maybe we
got some time.
Yeah. And it might be a movie spoiler.
Yeah.
Maybe like the surprise twist at the end of Avatar 3 is what guru is.
I hope
but
not.
But also keep in mind that we will have more tribes, and I think it's totally acceptable and logical that other tribes would have different words. Maybe the Tepani would use guru, and the Omatikaya would use tween. That's also a possibility, right?
Sort of like dialects, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd love
I didn't
that.
think about dialectical differences, because we know there are dialects, we just don't know what any of them are.
I always thought the idea that the Nafi language is basically unified across the entire moon because of Ewa. I always found that to be like a cool premise. And
it still is. Like, dialectical differences don't really... It's like the difference between Southern U.S. English and British English. There's a few different words here or there, but...
Yeah, like wrong English and good English.
Oh, that's another discussion.
But, I didn't think about that, because, it's kind of not well known, but it is canon that there are dialectical differences between regions.
Yeah.
We just don't know what any of them are.
And I'm sure that as we explore more of Pandora, we'll get to see those, and I will become more okay with them.
I really hope that we get to see some, because I really want to see some dialectical differences. It sounds really fun.
Sunkesun, lì'fya, erong.
Okay, what do you guys think about Kom?
I love it.
Yeah, I had it already selected in the post here. I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Modal verb.
Me too.
We have a new modal verb. Why is it not on your S++ list?
Yeah.
It's on A. It's on A tier.
Okay.
Not enough. No, really. I mean, modal verbs are so useful in conversation, and I mean, I still have to go more into like my brain output, but
yeah.
So this will take some time to rewire, but I mean, it's a really useful verb.
Yes.
I find it interesting too, because it specifically mentions that it's an intransitive verb, which means we can't use it transitively. That's actually a different verb.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit confusing.
You
right?
dare.
Yeah.
Like
it's gonna be a trap and a half, probably.
Yeah. The reason I don't have it at the top of my list is mostly just because it's it invokes a sort of style of speaking that I don't personally use. Like, I'm not particularly easily like offended by things, and I'm not exactly like a stickler for like honoring somebody, like I guess implicitly or whatever, and like the idea that you might offend some sensibility or whatever. I don't know. I don't see myself using that word as much as other modal verbs. Mm-hmm. It definitely has a use, and I'm glad that it exists, and it's always cool to have new modal verbs, but the reason I didn't rate it as highly was because it's not something that I see myself using a whole lot.
Kom Ftxozä op Karyu Pawl.
And then what?
I have to mention it because I'm the science and space guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tsu'tey and Tsu'tey. I was very happy to see.
Yeah.
I was really happy to see those. I was actually really curious what those, what the other two parts of Alpha Centauri would be called. So that made me really happy.
I rated
it's
those
so much
pretty
better
highly
than
too.
Yeah, it's so much better than Tsu'tey Amune.
Yeah. If
Amune.
it was that, I would have been like.
Yeah.
What's also cool is I think that this word probably, like those two words probably have gone higher than just Pawl, because I remember that this was actually proposed years ago, but then it was decided to be Cameroonian. So yeah,
it feels very Cameroonian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely JC territory to be able to make it at least canon.
Yeah. What I appreciated about these words was just the etymology of them gives a window into how the Na'vi think about the different celestial bodies around them.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing that I think found a little bit sad or a little bit disappointing is because we have Naranaum, which has more like a mythological background for me, at least. And Tsu'tey just seems so, it's the little brother of the sun.
Yeah.
It's the sun adjacent.
Yeah. So I hoped for more mythological background, that would invoke more stories, or that the name itself would say something about the celestial body. Yeah, like Naranaum, yeah.
Well, you also have to consider the size of these objects in the sky.
Yeah, that's the one I can't fathom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to fathom it. It showed up in the movie.
All right, I'll watch it again.
You sound sad about this.
Sorry, we had to twist your leg.
By now, it's a chore.
But as with Pomerix etymology, I love the etymology of Tsu'tey. I like that one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's.
It's a little sky lamp.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's sweet.
It's cute.
Yeah.
I have another favorite besides Kom, which is Sunkesun.
Srana.
And I will actually get that tattooed very soon.
Soon, soon, you mean?
What?
No, really? Okay.
What? Yeah. Of course.
It's going next to Weruke'u, right?
Srane. Sunke sun Weruke'u.
I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pattern here.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I remember something. But yeah, I like that one too. And I have heard it should be added to Horen shortly. And that the nuance with it where you can't really use it to talk about somebody else that's not the listener.
Yeah, like a third person. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that specificity.
Or myself, right? Yeah. But that's actually not so weird because it's also true in English, right? If they like it or not, it's weird to use that for a third person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've used like whether he likes it or not and things like that, but
fair.
That's different because this one defaults to it. In fact, with the example sentence, Sunka sun is literally the entire phrase, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
True. Yeah, another instance where Na'vi is shorter than English.
Yeah, there's a
three-syllable word for a 6-word phrase.
This is a cool thing about Na'vi and English, right? So if you translate Na'vi into English, it gets 2 times as long. And if you translate English into Na'vi, it also gets 2 times as long.
It's true.
Yeah, it depends on what you're translating, but yeah, the length will vary one way or the other.
One very short one is Semke for bridge. I'd actually been hoping for that. Like, I actually have a blog post from 2016, I think, where I'm complaining that there's no word for bridge. So now past me can be happy.
After all these years.
Yeah, now you can edit it.
I can edit it in, yes. Edit 3 years later.
Okay, that one. I for some reason I forgot about this one. We have Phil now. That one's interesting. Like a plaything, a child's toy.
Yeah,
that's cool. I've actually been looking for that word for a while.
Yeah, which was also a point of discussion amongst the LEP members because it is the short plural of pil, of Na'vi stripe.
Ooh.
But I mean that's also going to happen, right? With the short plurals hom and kom.
It already has. Yeah, it already has happened. For example, N.
Which one?
N. It's it's either 3 guesses or 3 well-educated guesses or a piece of clothing.
Yeah, that one I like. I want to have like a not a tongue twister, but some like an elaborate
like buffalo
sentence where you say, what is that? We also had one in one of the study groups. We had pepen. Could be, what is that? What kind of clothing, or what 3 guesses?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I've used that somewhere inside my lessons. I can't remember where exactly, but yeah, it's a little trap.
Can we all agree that the worst word of this update was Zekoyu? Because we already have the tools to make this productively.
Yeah.
Actually, backstory there. This is from the radio play, and we had already used it freely in our translation, and then suddenly in Paul's translation there was suddenly the need to make it an official word, but we had just used it already. So yeah.
I put
Still
this
nice
on the
to have
same
the
tier as
confirmation.
words like tsierafe and chocolate, where it's like
chocolate.
Yeah, but isn't there also Zoslu? Because we say something like Zoslivu or something like that.
But Zoslu implies becoming well. A doctor doesn't cause someone to be. A doctor causes somebody to become well. They don't just become well. Like Zoslu is a passive process to me, where Zeiko is to make something well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Exactly.
So Zeikoyu is then doctor, while Zosluyu would be
yourself.
patient.
Patient, yeah.
Oh,
I
guess.
Yeah, Zosluju would be. I like that. I'd be okay with that.
That's cool.
Well, but I mean, if you think about this, then all the adverbs that come directly from adjectives with via ne are also kind of redundant because it's a productive process. Yeah, but
they often actually are. But I also like that for some of the productive rules, there's always exceptions. Like Untitled, which doesn't mean little tree, but it means bush. I mean, it makes sense, but you wouldn't have guessed it.
See, those specifications matter though, because it's non-obvious.
Yeah, that one's more of just it takes on another meaning. But I guess to some extent I can appreciate adding it to the dictionary. That way, when someone's coming in trying to figure out what the word for a doctor or a healer is, they don't immediately go to doctor. They can find zekoyu.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure that, like, if you have zeko as a verb, that you don't accidentally make zekeko, because you think it's a root verb, which is a mistake I have seen.
I've wondered about that a couple of times.
It's incorrect. We have looked it up. Yeah.
I was curious if you could say Ftxozä, but probably not.
Yeah, so I think that would also count as incorrect, yes.
Well, a little bush.
It's a little bush.
I believe can you say Brötchen in German?
Buschlein.
Buschlein.
I believe the word you're looking for is snarik. Snarik.
Snarik.
Snarik.
Collection of leaves.
Snarik, yep.
Actually, I think those would be the kind of things that Na'vi would like Na'vi humor would consist of. Stupid
Na'vi puns.
No. What I wanted to add also is what completely felt redundant to me, more or less, was maitan and maite.
Yes.
Yep.
FDR.
The only way I can explain these two is that when you're speaking softly to your child because it hasn't done anything bad or something and you don't want to scold it, you use maitan or maite, and when it has done something bad, you just insert the glottal stop to sound more harsh. Maybe, I don't know.
I have news for you, Eana. Greetings from the future. These are used in the movies.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Yeah.
How do you know?
So it's obvious. So like my child and the sequels are centering around the children of the Sully family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. True.
Yeah. You're most likely right on that.
So someone of the cast forgot to pronounce the glottal stop, and now we have this.
There you go. That's what happened. Again, spoilers. I'm from the future.
Yeah, okay.
I can't tell you too much about the Avatar sequels.
I do like the comparison though to the Spanish forms because like mijo and mija it's used very often in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so maybe this is something similar to that, where it's used relatively often, and so it kind of naturally contracts and it's added to the dictionary. But
yeah,
I also agree it's not the most earth-shattering set.
Yeah, but it's still an addition to the language, so it's still valuable.
More words.
Yeah, exactly.
As always, we end the episode with Na'vi practice. The word of the cast this time is fnu, which is a verb. It means for something to be quiet. And with that, we're going to end the episode. Be sure to join us next cast for more exciting news from the world of Pandora. We're going to be discussing the new Tsu'tey's Path issue. Apologies for no Na'vi conversation, though I'm sure you can see in your player of choice that we did go on quite long, but I hope the interviews and discussion about the new words that have entered our language is sufficient Na'vi for this cast. We'll be back with our more usual patterns probably next episode. Tsakurvai, Hayalovai.
Hayalovai, Mafrapo.
Hayalovai.
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 When I said it sounded kind of like a question. Hayalovai? Hayalovai, Sarak?